Today, I'll be discussing an overview of sulfur metabolism and how it's an essential nutrient to life in many ways. To start off, there's the basic cycle of sulfur metabolism that can be found in humans, plants, and bacteria. In bacteria, they use sulfonates and sulfate esters. Microorganisms reduce sulfate by changing the valence number to -2 into a sulfide through the process called assimilative reduction. This process is assimilative because sulfide is used exclusively for the synthesis of cysteine, methionine, and other metabolites. Sulfur is only found in two amino acids, that is, cysteine and methionine. Then, the analogous function in aerobic organisms is known as the respiration of oxygen and the release of carbon dioxide. On Earth, there's constantly a flux between oxidized and reduced states of sulfur through chemical processes. This cycle is then termed as the biogeochemical sulfur cycle. It is also important to know that enzymes must reduce sulfur in sulfur metabolism, stripping away the oxygens in order to incorporate it into biomolecules that can be used in various processes on Earth. This is just a simple overview of sulfur metabolism. Now we can look at how sulfur metabolism is used in humans, specifically in the microbes of our intestines. To start, there are many foods we eat each day that are rich in sulfur. It can be acquired through proteins, and it can impact the health of our gut. It is also found in our intestines and our colon, and sulfur is used to fix the DNA and protect it from getting damaged. In humans, hydrogen sulfide can be taken out and an enzyme reductase can be used. Atomic sulfur is created in our body, and this is sulfur that has no charge. A sulfite then attacks the atomic sulfur to produce thiosulfate. Sulfur can then be oxidized into sulfate, which is the most usable type of sulfur that there is. This is because sulfate can be used in many biochemical processes and is used especially in ATP phosphorylase. This is the main reason we need sulfur metabolism in humans, is to produce sulfate. But we can't forget about the plants. This is also super important because sulfur is one of the 18 essential nutrients required for plant growth. Sulfur in plants travels a long way, starting from the roots, then to the shoots of the plant. It travels through the xylem, and the sulfate in the xylem gets reduced in the chloroplast and is then used to synthesize cysteine. Cysteine is an amino acid. Remember this from the first slide. Anytime you look up sulfur metabolism, there will always be cysteine involved because sulfur is found in cysteine. There are sulfate transporter genes as well in the leaf tissues of plants, and interestingly, the microbe Chlamydomonas reinhardti does this as well. This is what you see in the bottom left corner. Chlamydomonas mediates the uptake of sulfate in the chloroplast. So now we can understand why there is always a high demand for sulfur where gas exchange occurs. It is also very important to know that sulfur metabolism in plants is stimulated by photophosphorylation, and also plants are primary producers of organic sulfur. This is just another way of showing how important sulfur is in our environment. Lastly, we can just sum up to see how sulfur is used in everyday parts of life, whether that's in the gut of humans or in flowers and plants. We can also see how it affects corn plants in the bottom two photos. When plants begin to yellow, for example, the picture on the bottom right, we see the difference between bright green and bright yellow. The yellow means that there is sulfur deficiency in that plant. This is an example of a corn plant on the two bottom photos. The photo on the left has enough sulfur, and the photo on the right means the corn plant is lacking in sulfur. Also, looking at the top photo on the left, this is an example of ulcerative colitis. This is when sulfur is converted to hydrogen sulfide in the colon, causing fermentation, which can produce a lot of gas and pain in our colon and in our body. This is all due to sulfur. And then there's sulfur burps. Did you know that burps are all because of sulfur? The faster we eat or the more food we eat at a time, the more likely you are to burp because of all the air you just inhaled that contains sulfur. Too much sulfur is toxic for our body, so we must be careful because too much of the sulfur can be also toxic to the brain. And if we have too much sulfur, it can be fatal. Now, just take this as a sign to slow down your sulfur intake if you're burping too much, because maybe you've had too much alcohol or you've had too much protein in food, or maybe you just ate too fast and need to slow down your eating. This can all help reduce the gas coming out of your body that is sulfur. Well, that's all I have for sulfur metabolism, and I hope it was easy to understand, and I hope these examples helped.